introduction, Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. From the IFE's perspective, and no offense to anyone else, but marketing genius, you know, and we know him very well from that regard. He's been a wonderful supporter of IFE and activities over the years. So he has to leave us later this afternoon.
He's an Aggie, be careful.
Like putting that show on, you know, getting ready to do some things. But Shafer's going to share some things with us about the customer, that is coming to the fair. They have obviously done some wonderful research. So Shafer, it's yours. Have at it.
Well, thank you, Marla. And I need for you to pretend that there are actually two of us here this morning making this presentation, because when we committed to do this, Jason Kane was supposed to take the first 30 minutes, and I was supposed to take the second 30. Jason is on our staff. He actually does a lot of things for us. Technically, he is our manager of entertainment, which means he books our acts for our show. And when I say technically, he also helps us do a lot of market research. He was a consultant for many years in the marketing business. Particularly, he was a consultant to radio stations. I don't normally use any type of a lesson plan, but sometime today I will be reading from Jason's lesson plan. I promised him I would get part of his information in here. And you're going to hear some jargon that those type of people use, like T3P. I'll explain to you what that means in a minute. I want to tell you, and I think that looking around this audience, probably 70% of you will know what I'm talking about. I gave this to a marketing class I did at a college not long ago, and I suddenly realized I had to explain what I was talking about. So if any of you don't know what I'm talking about, ask Lewis Katz. I graduated from Texas A&M University in 1967. I was commissioned officer, aviation designated. I was heading for Vietnam as a helicopter pilot. And a dean at A&M at the time, Dean Potts, wrangled me without my knowledge an assistantship and a deferment from the Army to go to graduate school. So I ended up at Iowa State University pursuing a degree in technical journalism and mass communication technology. It seemed like an obvious thing to do rather than go to Vietnam 2 years quicker. And I really had the major somewhat picked out for me. I was an undergraduate ag journalism major at Texas A&M University, and the only thing that seemed to fit, and oh, by the way, he got me that assistantship, so I really couldn't pick another university. And the only thing that seemed to fit was that technical journalism and mass communication technology. It was probably one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because I got to get introduced to statistics and research and analysis, and particularly audience analysis. And we had a class. It was the last class I had. It was in the last quarter there before I did report to Fort Benning, Georgia for infantry officer basic training, and then ultimately Army aviation. We had a course in audience analysis. And the professor was a renowned professor at Iowa State. He was finishing up his career there, but he was noted by ad agencies and marketing firms all over the world as the leader in his industry. And he would assign us group projects throughout that quarter. But midway through that quarter, the news hit the publishing world and the journalism world that the Saturday Evening Post had ceased publication. Anybody here remember the Saturday Evening Post? His assignment to us was, you got 1 week, tell me why. Man, we didn't have the internet then. Didn't have Google then. But we went to the libraries, and we had our knowledge base, and we came back. Took us 2 days. I think there were 6 groups of us. Took us 2 days, each one of our groups, to make the presentation. And we went through all these things. Television came on the scene, changing demographic. The lawsuit, mammoth lawsuit, happened to Curtis Publishing and to the Saturday Evening Post in 1964. They published an article, didn't just insinuate, it said Bear Bryant at the University of Alabama and Coach Wally Butts at Georgia fixed the game. And Curtis Publishing said, you know, we're the media. We're protected. The Supreme Court said, no, you're not. Give Mr. Butts $3.5 million. Oh, you know, well, the financial thing, TV, all these other things. We finished and the professor just sat there and shook his head. He said, I hope the hell some of my top clients don't hire you people. He said, I'm so damn ashamed that I haven't taught you better. And you've wasted so damn much research time, and you've wasted so many words up here. And he turned around and wrote on the blackboard, their audience died. He said, that's all I need to know. He said, but now, could they have avoided that? Well, most of us said, probably not, because of this and because of that and because of that. And he said, bullshit. He said they were formed. Actually, they were formed by Benjamin Franklin, but sold and finally purchased by the people who renamed Benjamin Franklin's publication, the Saturday Evening Post, in 1897. They folded in 1969. Well after that publication went into being, Newsweek came on the scene, Time came on the scene, Life came on the scene, U.S. News and World Report came on the scene, and in 1969, they were all flourishing. In fact, most of them flourished for another 35 to 40 years. They're just now beginning to go out of publication. I think that all but 2 of those are now internet publications only, but that's only happened in the last 7 to 8 years. So they had 35 full years that they could have flourished, and they did not. And when we sat down with his guidance and started analyzing this again, they had an audience that they catered to, and it was fiction, and it was Rockwell paintings, and it was conservative politics. And these other publications that came on the scene saw the new audience, and they went after that with current events and current news and the things that people wanted at that time frame. And more importantly, they didn't use paintings and illustrations, they used photographs. And the last publication in America to switch to photographs on their cover was the Saturday Evening Post, because all of those artists, including Rockwell, had served them so well all that particular time. You know, Marla made the comment a little earlier when she was talking to you, when she was looking at you, and she said, you're probably a representative of a lot of your audience. I'm going to tell you, if you're a representative of even more than 20% of your audience, you're in deep trouble. You're in really deep trouble. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo has grown 36% in its journal attendance in the last 5 years. We did that because we had a wake-up call. Actually, we had 2 or 3 wake-up calls in my 39 years there. But we had a real wake-up call at the end of the 80s. We had grown, and then there was that petroleum bust in 1982 that shook the state of Texas, like even this economic downturn hasn't shaken the state of Texas. And we went into a nosedive. We actually lost attendance from 1983 to 1986 that equaled 24% of our attendance. We hired McKinsey & Company, and they came in and did an analysis of us. And I don't know how many of you know McKinsey & Company, but they're one of the top analytical companies out there. They're usually used by Fortune 100 companies to come in. Well, sometimes they're used by Fortune 100 companies to merge and to rip out and tear apart and restructure. But a lot of good companies use them to say, what are we doing wrong? how can we improve our efficiency? How can we improve our reach? How can we improve our production? How can we improve our sales to our customers? Now, I can tell you the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, well, we probably could afford McKinsey & Company now, but we sure couldn't have afforded them in 1986 and 87 when they were brought on board. The study they did for us at that time was about a $3 million study. But our chairman of the board at that time was a man named Don Jordan. Don Jordan was chairman of the board of Houston Industries at that time, which was known as Houston Lighting and Power, and a lot of other companies, Intex and companies like that. They had hired McKinsey & Company for several years in a row as a consultant at the tune of about a $30 million a year contract. He knew that they did 2 pro bono studies a year somewhere in the world, and in 1986, going into 1987, the pro bono studies was the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo and the New York Philharmonic. McKinsey & Company came in, talked to all of our people, went through all of the research and analysis. It took them a year. Then they came back and made the presentation to our executive committee. And they said, you know, one of the first things we don't understand is why did you abandon what served you so well for so long? Well, like what? Well, you went from appealing on your music presentation to the masses to country western. Where did you get this tunnel vision from? And one of our executive committee members said, we've always been country western. Oh yeah. Who was your first star? Was Gene Autry? Do you understand what Gene Autry was when you had him in 1942? He was the hottest entertainer in the world. He did command performances in front of kings and queens. Little girls and little boys in New York City stood in line with their dime to get into the theater to see him. He was as mass appeal as you could possibly be at that time. Yeah, but when we moved out here to this stadium, you know, we had to go to a different kind of entertainment. Wow. They were really impressed that our executive committee picked up on that and said that. So what did you have when you moved out here? Well, we had the stars of Gunsmoke and Bonanza, the Rifleman. What was your attendance like when you did that? Well, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. You know, we moved from that Coliseum downtown where we had 8,000 seats to the Astrodome where we had 42,000 seats. And we were doing pretty good. But you weren't really growing into it, were you? Well, no. So how did you grow into it? What was your greatest growth period in your history? They didn't know that. Quite honestly, with all my marketing acumen and all my research and just having come out of the Army and my master's degree and everything else, I hadn't picked up on that. I hadn't looked at the research. I hadn't looked at the records. The largest growth period happened 1973 through 1977. Who were your entertainers then? Well, there was Elvis, there was the Jackson 5, there was Sonny and Cher, there was Leif Garrett, there was the Osmonds, there was Tony Orlando and Don, there was Tom Jones. How many country western stars did you have during those 3 years? Let's see, we had Charlie Pride, Earl Haggard, and Johnny Rodriguez. It's only 3 country western stars we had in 3 years. We were appealing to the mass audience again. And more importantly, we were appealing to an audience that stood about this tall. The mother with the checkbook, and grandma and grandpa who came with them. And that is the first sobering experience that we had. You know, McKinsey & Company sat down and analyzed something and said, you need to increase the length of your show. What? Our attendance has been going down and you're telling us to put more days in our show? Yeah. Put 5 more days in your show. What? You're only going across 2 weekends. Have you analyzed your attendance and looked and seen who came But more importantly, have you listened to the people? Do you understand that and at that time, the Houston marketing area was about 3.9, 1.1 million, somewhere in that range. When we went out and analyzed, they said the reason a lot of people don't come to your show is they can't fit you into their schedule. They can't take 10 days and fit you into their schedule. If you go across 3 weekends, at least 25% more of them can fit you into their schedule. And oh, by the way, you're doing those matinees and evening performances on the weekends, get rid of that. Doesn't work. You're making a lot of people unhappy because you're causing a traffic jam out here. It's not working. But more importantly, you're inconveniencing the hell out of them. Take those performances and move them to these additional days and put them on the additional weekends. We think you'll improve your attendance in 1 year by 25%. Okay? Maybe we'll try that. Oh, and when you go to that Saturday and Sunday performance, start it at 4 p.m. What? It's crazy. No, it's not. It's not crazy at all. Particularly on Sunday. At least 60% of your attendance goes to some religious activity on Sunday morning. And you notice I didn't say church, because we're a very diverse community in Houston. We have all types of religions in Houston. And he said, some of them go to church on Saturday. You're putting that thing in there. Our matinee was at 11 o'clock. This is 60% of your attendance anymore didn't come because you had it at 11 o'clock. You had that evening performance at 7. School's the next day. You know, it doesn't work. Put it at 4 o'clock. But more importantly, we've looked at your attendance that's coming in here on Sunday night. You know what they do when your performance is over? They run to get off the grounds. So you put that performance at 4 o'clock. You don't have a matinee at 11 that people are trying to rush in and out of the crowd. And they're going to come out early and enjoy your carnival, your commercial exhibits, your food booths. They're going to go to the show at 4. They're going to get out at 7:30 to 8. And they're going to go back to the grounds. And they said, we're going to tell you, our research tells us it's going to be about 50-50 that come before your show to enjoy all the other stuff, and the other 50% come to your show and enjoy all the other stuff after that. Tony's really going to like this one. Why in the world are you hiding your carnival out behind the Astrodome? Why? Well, our executive committee gave them all those reasons. Well, you know, it's inconveniencing the other people. You know, we're a big urban city. You know, carnies. What do you know about the people who live in Houston? Now, this demographic has changed a lot since 1987, so I want to give you the 1987 version of it. 71% of the people living in the Houston marketing area in 1987 came from a small community. They moved into that Houston market. Or they were living in Fort Bend County and were that rural market at that time. And their vision of a fair was that big Ferris wheel, all those lights. It's, damn, you got 610 right out there. Put it on 610. Make it your billboard. Surround your show with it. Make people walk through it. You do that, you're going to double your carnival revenue in 1 year. But more importantly, you're going to pull people off and into this thing. Well, we did all that. We did it extremely well. One of the hardest things we had to do was change that entertainment mode. We didn't just go all country western 1 year because it seemed like the thing to do. In 1979, there was a funeral in this nation. Those of us who work in the entertainment business know it well. We buried Top 40. KILT in Houston, which was the Top 40 pop station for 32 years under Gordon McClendon, one day woke up and said, we're country western. Top 40 went away. Conway Twitty, who was a pop star singing It's Only Make Believe, suddenly had to find a new place to play his music. And Kenny Rogers with the Fifth Edition had to find a new place, and Anne Murray, and so on and so on. And they all became country when they had been pop. And so it was very easy for us to do that. And suddenly we got mirrored into that mode. And guess what happened? But they all bust. You stop and think about this. In 1981, we were on top of the world. And what was happening in the entertainment industry? Some damn movie called The Urban Cowboy. Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton were singing together. Bankers on Wall Street were wearing boots and hats. The Western wear industry had never had a better year ever. It all crashed. Country music went to 7% of the music played literally in 18 months. The economy was in turmoil. And that damn guy that starred in that movie, The Urban Cowboy, had a movie the next year about dancing. And guess what music was on everybody's playlist? Dance, disco. That was followed by reggae. And we were all scrambling, trying to figure out what to put on our stages, and we were pretty stuck with country western acts. Not just because that's what we've been doing, but because in the 6 years, and that's how short the memory is in the entertainment industry. In 6 years, the managers, the agents, the acts thought we were all country. And we had real trouble breaking that mold. One of the things that happened to us, when we had Elvis at our show, we actually had him twice, 1972, 1974. He played on a little stage that was only 16 feet in diameter that we pulled out in the middle of our stadium with a tractor. When we suddenly in 1988 and 89 said we got to get Julio Iglesias and these acts that need to come in here and play to the audiences that we need, there's no way in hell we're going to play on that thing. It's not going to happen. So one of the first things we had to do was change our presentation mode. And we're changing it today, and we'll be changing it next year, and we'll be changing it the next year. Because all those things that Marla put up there, all those things that those kids are looking at today, all the ways they're getting their entertainment, we have to give them that much every night on our stages. We have to make our presentation as good as what they're seeing on TV, as good as what they're seeing on what they're holding in their hand, as good as the video game they're playing. Because that's what we're all competing with today, and that's what we're going out to get. We built a fantastic new stage. We got our market research in place. It took us 3 years to convince the entertainers that we wanted and needed to come and play our stage. And the first one was Julio Iglesias. He played his first contract performance at our place. I say his first contract performance because he had been to the States 3 years prior, but he rented the football stadiums himself, and he did his own shows himself. Quite honestly, we used to sponsor. We went to Miami, we met with his brother, Juan Carlos, presented our case, and he said, we would love to play your show, but we just can't. I'm telling you this because this is part of using your resources. Use every resource you have to get what you need to make this happen. Dan Gaddis, who was our general manager then, and I went to Miami. We met with Juan Carlos, and we were so dejected when he said, if we ever were going to play a contract, it would be the Astrodome. It would be the Houston Livestock Show. But just understand we can't do that. We're sitting in the airport in Miami, and I'm reading the paper. Holy shit. Coca-Cola just signed a $36 million endorsement contract with Julio Iglesias, and he owes them 2 concerts somewhere in the United States. We didn't even go back to Houston. We went to Atlanta. We called our Coke rep in Houston, J.R. Daly, and said, J.R., meet us in Atlanta. We need to talk to you. He said, what about? Julio Iglesias. Oh, you guys read that story too. Yeah, we did. That was one of Julio Iglesias' contract acts, concerts for Coca-Cola that year was at our show. Use the resources you have to break every load that you can probably get. The next thing that happened to us, and this is the wake-up call we had last, by a real quirk of fate that I'm not going to go into totally, we ended up building Reliance Stadium, tearing down the Astor Hall, and building Reliance Center all at the same time. We did 2 shows, 2 years, with only 25% of the on-site parking that we had before. Probably only 17% of the on-site parking we have now. We, first year, bussed in 750,000 spectators to our show. Didn't bust in that many the second year because it didn't come. We lost 36% of our attendance in that time frame. 2003, first year in Reliance Stadium, bam, it was all back. Because that was the first chance most of Houston had to get into Reliance Stadium. The Texans had played a season there, but they sold everything out as season tickets. And they didn't give many of the season ticket holders didn't give many of their tickets away. So it was very, very important for people to come out and see our show. We sold more season tickets that year than we've ever sold before, and I think we'll ever sell again. We had 42,000 season tickets sold that year. Next year, 28,000 season tickets. It was a horrible year that first year. It was a horrible first show that first year. People came out and the Astor Hall was gone. Where the hell's the livestock show? What's that building over there? Rained 4 inches that night. People ran into the Reliance Stadium, saw George Strait play, ran out in the rain and got in their cars on the buses and left. Tony remembers that night. Didn't open, did you?
No.
We realized that we had a challenge. We realized we were back where we were in 1987, just a different set of parameters. But the most important thing is we didn't know, we'd been doing research. We started heavy research after that thing in 1987, but we didn't really know what the potential new market for us was. We really didn't know if we were reaching out, if we were really getting our message through. And in 2003, Marla, social media was really not quite happening. Wasn't quite there. I need to tell you that we did something at that time frame that I hadn't done since I was in graduate school, but we did focus groups. We hired a company out of Dallas to come in and help us. You know, they did a lot of pre-research for us, and they brought us in for 7 nights worth of focus groups, and they broke down our audience into the various segments. And I need to tell you, breaking down your audience into segments and understanding those segments are probably the most important thing you can do when you start putting together your market research. But you know, we sat aside behind the mirrors and we listened to all this and we, damn, where do people get these ideas? Where do they get these preconceptions of who we are and what we are? How have we been missing that in our research? And the thing that became very apparent to us real quick was we've been researching the hell out of the people that come to our show. I'm going to tell you that's extremely important. As you move forward, if you do not know your audience, if you do not know who's coming to your show right now, don't go looking for a new audience. Because you've got to understand what your audience is. Oh, I told you it's dying. Guarantee it's dying. Your audience is dying every year, every day, every week. And how you replace it is extremely critical. But you need to know what your audience is now. I hate to use this example, but I'm going to. There is a fair in Colorado, actually a rodeo, that was extremely successful. And it started watching what Houston was doing, started watching what San Antonio was doing, and said, we're not really growing as fast as we need to be growing. We need to add concerts to our rodeo. And they did. And you know, one of the first things we realized, they didn't have an idiotic clue what they were doing when they started signing entertainment. They did something that we call stupid money in the entertainment buying industry. There's not any managers or agents here. They overpaid. But the most important thing, they not only overpaid, they didn't understand their audience. And to pay for this entertainer, they had to double and triple their admission price to the rodeo. These rodeo fans said, no, I don't do that. Not coming. Well, guess what? The Kenny Chesney fans in Colorado said, go to a rodeo and see Kenny Chesney? And I can go over here and see Kenny Chesney by himself? No. What that rodeo didn't understand was the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, our fat stock show, when they had all those entertainers the first time, grew up with it. And it was just an intermission originally. And then it became slowly more than intermission. Then it became the headline for the rodeo. But it was from 1942 to 1976, 77, well, probably 72, when Elvis came the first time, that it became the headline. I'm not going to name the rodeo, but Marla knows well who it is. They're teetering on bankruptcy. They probably are not going to make it past this coming year. Understand your audiences. And do not go after a new audience at the expense of your audience that hasn't died yet. That's extremely, extremely critical as you start putting this stuff together. That is the research from last year's show. Actually, there's one piece that's here from 2010 for the Houston Livestock Show. There's actually 4 different pieces of research here. I put some of it out on the tables. Now, I'm really serious. There's nobody here in the artist business, is there? Okay, there's one of those books I really would like to have back. The other ones you can keep here. But the book that looks like this, when I did this presentation in Red Lodge, Montana, the North American Livestock Show and Rodeo Managers, I redacted that entertainment research in there. I didn't redact it in this one today. But you can see, we post-analyze even the audiences that come to see our entertainers. It's about 3/4 of the way back in that book. But we do 9 major research elements a year. We are, though, not only understanding who our audience is, but we buy the latest demographic data. And right now, buying the latest demographic data is a little bit of a crapshoot because it takes them 2 to 3 years after a census to get all that data compiled and get 100% of that SIM data out to the various agencies that you can buy that data from. Or you can get it actually from the Census Bureau, but you don't want to because you'll never plow through all that material. If it were printed, it's a train car load of material. But there are companies that begin to take that material and start putting it together in lifestyle and guides for you. Take a look at the attendance that you have and what it is and what your research tells it is. Take a look at what the demographics are and see who you're missing and begin to put that together. Now, some of you in here, the gentleman from Dallas, and some of you who are on the peripheries of Houston and on peripheries of San Antonio, are able to use zip code data a lot better than some of you who may be from a county fair, and you're the largest fair in 35 or 40 miles. Because you probably only have 1 zip code or 2 zip codes. But where we are in the Houston market, we're in our general marketing area, we have 179 zip codes. We can take zip code data and do a tremendous amount of analysis with that. If you're in a smaller fair, you're going to have to go to other modes to determine what your demographic is and what you have coming to your show. But there are definitely ways to do that. But be sure that you are doing that and understand that. I'm going to now put on my glasses and go to Jason's outline and do this T3P thing. Jason's, and some of you were on the conference call last week, wrote this down. The T stands for target. What is the makeup of the audience you're shooting? We've already talked about that, but this, when you start talking about this, obviously it's easy to say the word demographics, but when we're saying demographics, what really are we talking about? Well, obviously, gender and age is very important. Ethnicity is extremely, extremely important. In Houston, according to the latest census figures, we are 26% Anglo in general Houston. And that's not just in downtown Houston. Pretty true in Fort Bend County, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
26% Anglo, 44% Hispanic, 24% African American, and 6% Asian. That 6% Asian will be 10, 11, 12% in the next 5 years. It's the most rapidly growing demographic. It's outpacing the speed of the Hispanic market right now in Houston. So ethnicity is a big part of that. Household income, socioeconomic standing, these are all critical factors that you need to know and understand. There are 6 million people now in the Houston metropolitan marketing area. You can write 25% of them off right off the bat because they count everybody that's there. And those people who are of an age that not only just be infirm, they don't go anywhere anymore. And that age keeps getting pushed up as the baby boomers hit that market. But some of the things you need to be aware of, there is a ceiling on when the baby boomers will buy. There is a ceiling on when the baby boomers are going to come to your show. And we've lived, all of us in the fair business have lived with this boom as it's come up. Well, it's about to bust. And that's why it's extremely important that you understand your demographic. And you understand that you've got to replace that baby boomer group with another group that's coming up. So Jason's target is very important. What is your target audience? Be sure that you get out there and get a hold of that. His next thing is product. That's the first of the 3 Ps. Product is extremely important. After understanding your audience, do you have a product that aligns with what they want? Do you have a product that's going to appeal to them? And that's where the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo has spent a lot of money in the last 12 years. I'm going to say 12 years because we started what I'm about to talk about 12 years ago. And that was putting something into our presentation that we saw was going to be extremely important. This might be worthless in some of your fairs, but you got to find out what is worth something in your fairs as far as a product. We started a thing called Ag Venture with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. I'm not sure if a lot of you have been there. We didn't just start it. We knew it was going to take a while. Anything you do in the fair industry, it has been my experience, takes 3 years to have an impact. Oh yeah, you can always bring Hannah Montana to your show, or whatever the new Hannah Montana is, you're going to have an impact that year, but does it stay with you? But when you start putting something like Ag Venture in, it's going to take 3 years for it to have an impact. If it remains static during those 3 years, it's going to start falling away in 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you have to improve it each and every year. We've been putting about $250,000 in expansion each year. Now, I need to tell you, Houston is big. The market's big. Our presentation is big. We broke our all-time, and once I broke it, we shattered it, gross income this year. For the first time, we went over $100 million in production gross revenue from our show this year. Our audit committee has just finished up, and that will be reported to our board week after next. So $250,000 is big money, but in relation to our operating cost, it's not that big. I'm telling you this because if it's $5,000 at your fair, or it's $2,000 at your fair, you've got to invest in what's going to change your product and you need to be able to look at it and understand your audience. So, in Houston, we've got 6 million, oh, Louis knows this, I'm sure some of the other people in this area know it. 150,000 to 200,000 people arrive in Houston every year, either by birth or by transportation. That many people come into our market new every year. One Fortune 500 company can come into our area and it brings 3,500 jobs. You know, so we've got this kind of stuff coming in all the time. But we can put pigs being born. We can put chickens being hatched. We can tell the story of how honey gets from the flower to the plate and illustrate it very well. And there is an audience that's just waiting to come out there. And we have 4 petting zoos now, and we still can't fill the demand. And yeah, we have hand washing stations and education stations, and we're doing all those things. But I don't know what it might be in your area. You know, some of the smaller fairs, you know, I'm from Trent, Texas. You know, I know there's somebody here from the West Texas fair. You know, at first blush, you're going to say, but I'm in a much more rural area. You know how many people in Trent, Texas are still farming? My parents owned a cotton gin there when I was growing up. There were 72 cotton farmers coming into that gin. Three cotton farmers today. I bet if I go to Trent High School today and sit down and talk to the elementary school children there, how many of you have animals for you? That's just going to be very few. These rural kids are as urban as the urban kids today. I don't know what it is that you make your product, that you change your product to be, but it's got to be something that engages those kids. You know, maybe it is a texting contest. It's the world they live in today. Wow. What if you had competitions leading up to it, and the finals was in your main arena, and you had a really good prize there? I think you would activate more kids than you could ever. What if it's an Xbox contest? You know, what if? But in Jason's plan, make your product something that the target customer wants to come and see. I can't tell you how important it is to do something that we had a president, a man named Dick Graves, several years ago, that came in and totally blew up the model of our show as far as the volunteer structure was concerned. You know, we've always been a volunteer show. When I went to work, there were 2,000 volunteers. When Dick Graves came on board, there were, I think, about 6,000 volunteers. We were elitist. It's hard to say you're elitist when there's 6,000 of you, but you know, we were very selective. Committees were held to a certain size. We only had X number of committees. We had a long waiting list to get on those committees. Graves blew it up. Because I want everybody that wants to be on a committee to be on a committee. Let's figure out how to put them to work. And he had a word, constituency. Build a constituency. The constituency will support you. Give these people a stake in your show. Build a constituency of stakeholders, and they will make your show. We're pushing 26,000 volunteers, a new figure for you, Lois. It was 24 last year and 25 this year, and it's going to be 26,000 volunteers next year. On 110 committees, they work. More importantly, they buy. More importantly, there are marketing on. Oh, we spend $1.6 million in marketing. That's a fraction of the marketing power that those 26,000 families that come from every zip code plus 4 in the greater Houston. Oh, and that's an important thing too. Activate your show. You may not have a ward like we have in Houston, but activate your show in your lowest blue collar community and in your most elitist community. When I say activate, I'm not talking about sell tickets to them. I'm talking about make them stakeholders in their show. When we look at that 26,000 volunteers, they come from the barrios, they come from the wards that are brown and black. And now we're beginning to get into the Vietnamese community, and we're definitely getting into the Chinese and Japanese communities in Houston. Be sure you make all of these people a part of what you are putting out there. I mentioned season ticket holders a little while ago. We now have about 34,000 season ticket holders. When we take those 34,000, and 22% of those 34,000 are show members. But when we take the season ticket holders and we take those 26,000 volunteers, the ones that are not season ticket holders, last year they bought 75% of all the tickets we sold to our rodeo. And we sold 1,255,323 rodeo tickets. Constituency, make them a part of what you're doing. Understand what they need, understand what they want. We had a major catastrophe last year. Didn't look like it when we looked at all of the attendance that we had, the attendance records we broke. But we had a parking nightmare on 2 or 3 days out there. We didn't solve that. Our key constituencies will start becoming very unhappy, become unpleasant. If it's unpleasant, they don't want to do it anymore. Now, I'm not just talking about the volunteers. They were in that as bad as anyone, but the season ticket holders got called into it. When we start talking about constituencies, I'm going to put another one in there. May or may not apply to you, but you need to find one that does work. You know, we're a livestock show. We're all these things, and we have Hannah Montana and the Black Eyed Peas and all these entertainers, but and we have a rodeo, and we have the Super Series and Super Shootout, and all those things. But the first thing it says in our title is Houston Livestock Show. That is a major constituency. Last year, 16,822 4-H and FFA people entered projects at our show, or entered judging contests, or brought an ag mechanics project to our show. One of the things being passed around is an economic impact study that was done in 2010. Economic impact studies are a pain in the butt. If you do them really well, they're going to cost you a considerable amount of time and a considerable amount of money. But they are great research instruments, because if you have a Dr. Barton Smith from the University of Houston, who is the economic impact guru of the world, he's going to make sure that you do the research. He's going to make sure you interview the cowboys and see how much money they spend. He's going to be sure you interview the contestants and the exhibitors, find out how many people are flying out on airlines, find out how many hotel rooms are being rented, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look over the back of that economic impact study, you will see that the average project, the average heifer, the average steer, the average barrel that came to our show last year bought 7 people with it. You know, even as much as I do research, when I started seeing that, I said, that's got to be a mistake. You know, they didn't get that right. I went back to Trent. I was talking to a classmate of mine who is now one of those 3 cotton farmers left in Trent. He's farming about 4,000 acres now, all the way from Merkel to Roby to Rotan in Trent. And he said, coming to your show this year. I said, you are? He said, yeah, my granddaughter is showing a heifer. That one heifer brought 9 people to Houston. You know, so when we started looking at this and we started analyzing it, the junior show and those kids that competed in the calf scramble and the school art contest and the ag mechanics contest brought 390,000 people to the Houston Livestock Show. So there it's a constituency that got caught up in this parking. So we had all these elements, and the worst day was on spring break Wednesday. Oh, by the way, I'll be jumping ahead on Jason's piece, but put together a product and a promotion. If you got the product, you then have to promote it. But we started value days in 2008, with economic downturn effect. And we said, what's our slowest day on the grounds Wednesday? Medium-sized entertainers in the stadium that day. And let's see, what's that price of that ticket up there? 18 bucks. Let's lower it to 10. So we've got 18,800 seats up there in the upper level of the stadium. We don't take to 10 bucks. What's our admission on the grounds that day? 7. Let's lower it to 5. What's the county charge for parking out here at 12? Let's cut a deal with them and make them take it to 5. And if you're under the age of 13, let's let them in free. If they're senior citizens and we don't look real closely at driver's license, let's let them in free. So grandma and grandkids can get in free. They want to go to the rodeo, it's 10 bucks a piece. We started growing that value day. Concurrent with us starting that day, the state of Texas changed the rules of school attendance and said everybody will have spring break the same week. Everybody will start school at the same time. So suddenly, where we had been having a third of the schools on spring break our first week and a third, a second, and a third, everybody's on spring break the third week of our show. That Wednesday became the hottest ticket in town. Last year, we had 158,000 people come on our grounds on that Wednesday. That was the second highest attendance in our history, and all the others were Saturdays and Sundays. So we brought that many people out on Wednesday. Skip Wagner called me, who's our president, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and said, Shafe, get out to OST right now. Come and meet me. I'm at OST in North Stadium Drive. What's wrong, Skip? Nothing's moving. I said, I know our parking lots are full. He said, but nothing's moving. He said, it's a gridlock. Well, I went out there, and he was right. Nothing was moving on North Stadium Drive, on OST, on Fannin, on South Main. The down part of the city just came to a halt. We didn't hear from TxDOT. We heard from the mayor. The mayor got caught in that gridlock. It wasn't until after the show we found out the mayor got caught in that gridlock because she was going to her promotion at the Houston Zoo, which is just 4 blocks on the other side of OST. Texas Medical Center feeds off of OST. They park 170,000 cars a day, every day, at the Texas Medical Center. The Houston Museum District, and I'll say the district, every museum in the district had a promotion going that day because it's spring break. And they decided to pick Wednesday. The dinosaur exhibit at the museum, the Natural History Museum, was that day. And they were letting kids in free. The Museum of Fine Arts had a Rembrandt showing that day. And you know, we hadn't coordinated with each other. We hadn't put our promotions together. Each one of them and us said, we got to figure out how to get our people in here. So we put big mobile signs out on 288 that said, take OST. So we all drove our traffic into one central area. If that wasn't bad enough, we checked in our heifers that day, and we had 2,000 trailers that had to come in North Stadium. You already know the heifer show is on the second week this year, right? Don't close your eyes to your product. Don't close your eyes to your constituencies. Take care of all of them. And we sit down and you'll see there's one book that looks like this. This book solely exists because of that parking problem last year. All of these pages in here exist because of that parking problem. And if you take a look through that book, you'll see that we know on a day-by-day basis, this happens to be March the 1st, Clay Walker Day. The total attendance was 55,000, the rodeo attendance was 37,000, the grounds paid attendance was 18,138. The number of badges that came in on free admission was 8,803. Parked at Reliance Stadium was 26,212 cars with an average of 2.72 people per car.
2.7.
In paid lots nearby was X number of people. X number of people rode the shuttle bus. X number of people rode the light rail. X number of people came in by taxi, limousine, or parked in the streets nearby and walked in. Our research analysis tells us all of this. So we start figuring out, talk to our committee people, talk to our committee chairman. 3,500 committee people have duties on our grounds every day. And they got caught. They didn't make it in that day. So now, if you are a working volunteer on a show, we have put together parking lots where you are assigned. If you're on the Corral Club committee, you know, if you're going to do one of these things, you've got to make them fun. You've got to make them interactive. More importantly, you have got to make them current. I read an article in the Houston Chronicle a couple of days ago where small business wrote into the lady who every Sunday gives business advice, and the question was, do I need a Facebook page? I've just started this business, and the answer was, I don't know. But it could be more of a hindrance than a help if you don't understand it and you don't maintain it. Because a Facebook page is the same today as it was last week, as it was the week before that. It's unfriended real quick. And so you got to make these things. We run games. You know, oh yeah, we're going to announce 4 stars next week. We're going to announce 4 of our entertainers, and those will be the kickoff of our mini season packages where you can buy 9 performances, and 2 of these entertainers will be in those performances. We've been selling full 20 performance season packages all year long. But this is a big kickoff for us. Yeah, Facebook is really working that right now. Texting is really working that right now. Twitter is really working that right now. But you know, in July, we didn't have anything really to work any of those with. But we had a weekly contest, and they could win really good prizes. You know, we work with our entertainers and sign guitars, and we work with our suppliers, and you know, sometimes we just have to buy these things. But we have contests going continually, and every time you have a contest, you're getting more and more of these people in. At our rodeo every night, I don't know if a lot of you have seen this, but we have text to win on our big video screens. The minute they text in, you're automatically entered, you have an option, do you want to get on our texting list? That's one of the things you have to understand about these texting engines. Federal law is going to prohibit you from texting someone unless they say they want to be texted. And these companies that do this for you are not going to do it unless there is that buy-in. And they can buy out anytime they want to. We, as I just said, have 45,000 text messages. These are nearly all these kids in this age bracket. Now, as we start getting a little bit older, you know, I saw the hands go up on email. One of the most important things you can have today are email addresses. We have 65,000 email addresses on our email blast list. We call it e-news, and that's extremely important. If every time you can capture an email address, you don't have to hire a company to do this. Your IT department, or if you don't have an IT department, whoever you're contracting to do your IT can help you set up a automatic broadcasting email system. It's not that hard to do. Now, we obviously have close to 26,000, 28,000 members and volunteer email address. I say pretty close because about 9.5% of our volunteers don't have email at this point. You know, those are the ones that won't be around in 10 years. They're the 80-year-olds and the 85-year-olds. But even there, you know, we know we can email their grandson and it's a granddaughter, and it's going to be to them. But those email addresses are critical. So when we take the 65,000 that are not members and put it with the 28,000 that are members, you can see that with Facebook at 145,000, with our app that we say is going to be 250,000 next year, with all these lists beginning to come together, we can pretty well hit a market on any given 5 to 10 minute period with any targeted message that we want to put out there. And that's an extremely critical thing to you. I do want to...
So you got plenty of time.
I'm sorry?
You got plenty of time. Keep talking.
I do want to point out one thing to you. When we do our research, yeah, we look at the national trends, we look at the regional trends, but one of the great things about it when you do research like this, and you can see it in these books, you can do your own research of how do you find out about us? How do you get your general news, et cetera, et cetera. That star announcement that happens in January, on January the 7th, we will announce 14 stars that haven't been announced up until that point. The media make a really big deal out of that. We have a press conference and they're on the air at midnight and they're pumping it. It's a really, really big deal. How did you find out about our entertainment lineup for the first time last year? It's one of the survey questions. 46% said on your website. They've become conditioned. They know that we're going to be there 5 seconds before they can hear it on KIOT. Even though we're feeding it to KIOT at the same time, KIOT's got to get it either on their website or get it on broadcast. Let's say it's 30 seconds. That 30 seconds is so critical to those people that 46% of them are setting on our website when we announce those entertainers. A television news story came in number 2 at 10%. Radio news or DJ, 9%. A friend or a relative called me and told me, 7%. The show email blast, 4%. They weren't going to take a chance that our email blast was slower than our website. And quite honestly, it is. You know, if you're putting out 65,000, even with as fast a service as we have in Houston, it may take us 10 to 15 minutes to blow 65,000 email addresses out of there. Other internet sites, 4%. Radio advertising, 4%. Wow, what did we spend on radio advertising?
We spent too much.
The rodeo snail mail. We do mail out 3%. We mail to those people who do not have internet addresses. We just want to be sure they're getting it. A newspaper story, 3%. Social network, 3%. After everything we've been saying, 3%? There's a reason. It might have been 10 minutes before the social network. They wanted it immediate, so they knew how to get it, and they knew we were going to provide it to them. They figured out a way to get there. Newspaper advertising, 2%. TV advertising, 2%. Some other methodology, 4%. Now, we came back in the same instrument and said, how do you get your news? Now, this is not representative of national. It's not representative of Houston. It's representative of the people coming to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. How do you get your news? Wow. I saw a bunch of hands go up and say this while I was asked the question. 40% of the people that came to our show get their news from a Target website. Now, by Target, that's CNN or ESPN or the local HoustonChronicle.com or ABC13.news. Whatever it is, it's a Target destination. It's on their computer, on their smartphone, et cetera, et cetera. General websites, and oh, by the way, they could put down more than one choice here. We just want to know how you get your news. General websites is 25%. So 65% of our audience last year gets their news from the internet. Is their most important source. TV news, 25%. Radio, 24%. Oh, here it comes. Now just general news, 22% are getting their news through social media. And I bet you if we take the demographic down far enough, and we haven't done that where we can, and we get down here to here, it's probably going to be 98%. Newspaper, 15%. How many of you in this room are paying more than 15% of your ad budget for newspaper advertising? Good. We dropped ours to 10% this year. We'll probably drop it to 5% next year. Now, I'm I'm going to make a bold prediction. The Houston Chronicle will not be publishing a newspaper in 5 years. It's going to happen. I'm not going to ask for any raising of hands here, and I'm going to put an exclusion out the west because I know it rained 5 inches during his first and only weekend of the show this year.
We got tokens of
But
it.
that was the only weather event, I think, that could have affected any of us very badly this year. We had a perfect economy this year for the fair and festival industry. Absolutely perfect. I know you've heard this, but the greatest growth of the fair industry happened during the Great Depression. The greatest growth of the movie industry worldwide happened during the Great Depression. We saw it in our show last year, we saw it again this year. We even saw it in 2008. We had a perfect economy for us this year. We had perfect weather with one exception for most fairs. I'll read the news releases they put out. In the last week, they put out one that the Mississippi State Fair and the West Virginia State Fair had record attendance this year. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, the State Fair of Texas, State Fair of Oklahoma, all had record attendances this year. If you did not have a record attendance this year, you need to seriously look at what you're doing. You need to really seriously look at what you're doing, because you're in trouble. I don't want anybody raising any hands, but if you are not making that turn, you need to seriously evaluate what you're doing and figure out how you're really going to do it. I can't put it any more blunt than that. If you had a record year this year, let me give you one stern piece of advice. Remember that in 1954, the Saturday Evening Post had a record. The status quo is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Your audience is dying. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and it's in the, probably the most significant piece of research is this one that looks like this. It's the lifestyles and attendance, and it really is a breakdown of everybody that came to the rodeo. We really delve down and we really get into those. But look at something in there. And the first time this happened to me was in 1989, the first year that I did this level of research. In 1989, it said that 150,000 people came to our rodeo had never been there before. It's nearly 200,000 this year. It's astounding. Now, I told you how many season tickets we have. You'll see some research in here that tells you that 43% of the people that came to our rodeo this last year didn't buy the ticket. Out of 1,255,323 tickets, we only comped 19,000. So we didn't give them to them. Somebody bought them and gave them to them. And more often than not, they're giving them to somebody who's in the rodeo. So figure out a way for your constituency to become your benefactor and bringing new audiences to you. If you can figure out how to make that happen. I can't tell you that we were really smart and figured out to do that. We just sold a lot of season tickets. And oh, by the way, you'll see this figure in there, but we're only about 35% of our season tickets are sold to corporate or to business. The rest of them are individuals. And sometimes it's two families that go together and buy season tickets. Sometimes it's just individuals. I have bought season tickets for the last 25 years. Obviously, I work there, but my wife or I don't use those tickets but maybe once performance a year. We give them away. And that is a critical factor. Figure out how to get a constituency that works for you. Can I answer any questions for me? West? I don't know what to do about your weekend.
Yeah. Hey, we were so happy to have the rain. We were okay with it. We pulled 202 trailers off a grass lot, by the way, with 4 tractors. So, it was a good day. How do you do your research on grounds with your constituents?
On the grounds, I have two research teams, and I need to tell you, and I know you in the fair industry are going to have these people that come to you and say we can do all these surveys for you, and we can put these kiosks up and do all those things. I don't use that technology, and I don't use it for a reason. And it is the reason that when you walk into malls around the United States, you'll still get somebody walk into your face and say, "Could I do an interview with you, or could you sample this product? Could we talk to you about this?" A certain kind of person will answer a survey given an option. And it's very key to us that we're face-to-face in our surveys. We use volunteers. We have a key committee. They do some other things, but one of the things they do is do surveys for us. And they have been trained. And it's very important that when you do surveys and you do face-to-face, number one, you have to set a target number. I'm going to get 0.3% of the attendance if I can possibly get it. And if you can even, when you're looking at our numbers, even if you get 0.1%, you got a very statistical significant sample. But it's very important that no bias or no prejudice gets involved in this. And the first team that I had of volunteers were trained for me by Actual. The Six Flags organization did the best research that I ever saw done on site. If you ever went to a park for Six Flags, if you weren't surveyed, you probably saw them surveying somebody in the line as you came in. But being able to be sure you're getting a random sample, and I don't care how you train people, people are prejudiced. They can't help themselves. You know, some guys gravitate to good-looking girls. You know, some people don't want to interview a certain ethnicity. You know, and they think they're not doing it, but you know they're going to pick. So our teams go out there. We have them work in teams of two. The person that's just finished filling out the survey looks up and says, "Next person." But we don't interview that person because that person looked up and picked them. The person that's next to them says, "Okay, group 1, group 2, group 3, we pick group 3." And we interview. It's very critical, and that takes the random and puts it right in the middle of what you're doing. It's very important when you're doing these surveys that you're random on time. Certain type of people arrive at a certain time. Certain type of people go to a certain event at a certain time. It's very important that you are getting a random sample through your day part. It's very important when you're doing the kind of research we're doing here that you get the time down so you know what time you did that interview. You know the location. We don't go to that depth in here, but we go to it somewhere else. Whenever we're doing the rodeo interviews, the first thing they ask after they go, 1, 2, 3, "Ma'am, could we, I'm a rodeo volunteer," and they wear jackets, so they know they're rodeo volunteer. "We're trying to make your experience better. Would you give us 1 minute and 30 seconds to do a survey?" Nearly with that, unless, you know, we're right at the time that the rodeo is beginning to start, some people might want to work past you, but usually we get an interview. The first thing they do is say, "Could we see your ticket, please?" They record whether it's a pillbox ticket, whether it's a Lowe's ticket, whether it's a suite ticket. So we without even going to much trouble, we're determining what kind of buy this was. We're determining what kind of audience we have based on where they're going in the stadium. It's very, very important then for us, and it depends, like I said, if I'm doing research in Dallas, the most important thing I can get is, "Could I have your zip code, please?" With that zip code, I can find out so much in probability about all the people with that zip code. Now, if I only get 3 people from that zip code, you know, you can make some generalization, but it's not very good. But if I've got 100 people from that zip code, I can pretty accurately go to SIN data and the lifestyle data and pull out and say, there's this many people with a household income of this that lives with a house value of this, and there's this many people in their extended nuclear family. Because SIN data has done that for us, and lifestyle data has done that for us. Very, very important. And this is where some of the big research companies fall down. You know, Scarborough, love the hell out of Scarborough, but then when I started really taking Scarborough research and putting it with ours, you know, the age of my audience was tremendously off. Then I found out Scarborough doesn't interview anybody under the age of 19. because they're doing this for a group of advertisers. If the person that count comes to is 11 years old, we interview 11-year-old. We tell mom and dad, we can have her answer if you want to, but we want her opinion first. Then we get the age and sex. If there's 20 people in the group, we get that in each one of them. We have a form filled out so we can just pretty easily go through this. We have some key questions. You came to the rodeo this night. Why? If you're doing these things on a kiosk, that question right there would bucket momentum. Because you can't put 200 answers there. You can't put 200 little check marks there. We tell our people right now, whatever the hell they say. Once our encoders start working with that data, we'll figure out which bucket it goes into. So our volunteers do that research gathering. Now I need to tell you, we are going to some handheld devices this year. We think we've looked at this enough that we know where the buckets are. But if something weird comes in there, even though they got that handheld device, write it down. We then have our marketing department set up with our ID department to do all the number crunching on this.
One quick one, did you develop your questionnaires in-house, or did you have an outside firm after you talked to them, said, here's the 14 questions you need to ask?
We developed them in-house, and I need to tell you that my graduate thesis dealt with research survey forms and research analysis. So I am schooled in that. I stay very current to it, but get help. Get someone that understands how to do research for you, and it's the most important thing you can do is develop a research instrument that's not biased in itself. I can devise a research instrument to get any answer I want. I can't. It's very important that you devise the instrument to let the people give you the answers, not you create the answers.
Leroy,
Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead,
Go
Marla.
ahead.
Well, if we could break for lunch, because they've got it served, and then we can come back in here and then we can continue to ask them questions. But before we do that, Marla has some assignments for our tables when we come back.
Yeah, and Leroy, I want to make sure, are you able to stay a little bit afterwards lunch to answer some more questions?
Okay.
It won't put you too far behind? Okay, great, because lunch is ready and we'll take a quick break. Now then, here's the deal. Listen very carefully because you're going to sit in a specified group for lunch. When you come back, I'll tell you what your assignment is, but very quickly, you get to also go eat in this order. Gail Hall, lead the pack, followed by Roy Henderson, Shirley Baker, Jared Metzger, Susan Sullivan, Jim Beal, Pete Van Cook, and Steve Pointer. Debbie will show you where to go. When you come back, you sit at this table right over here. Next, Wes Allison. Here's the group with Wes. Caroline, Newport McKee, Glenna, Laffey, Cindy Ward, Rochelle Johnson, Cecil Willis, Deb